What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Practical channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. One of my audience members, William, sent me this link to the article about Elden Ring and the PS5 Pro's benchmark analysis. You click it, it's here on PC Guide, and they said PS5 Pro benchmarks show it falling behind the RX 6800, a 4-year-old GPU. That's half the price. Now, this is, a way to frame it, but I have to be fair to the PS5 Pro here, even though I can tell you that, yes, I'm not surprised that this is happening, because the biggest fail point for a lot of the people who were arguing for the power of the PlayStation 5 Pro was they did not pay attention to the CPU. You see, a lot of open world games are CPU heavy, not necessarily just the fact that it's open world. It's open world with a lot of computations going on. Elden Ring is very interesting. When you walk into a specific scenario of an open world, it could be an enemy encampment. It could be a random enemy on the side. It could be an enemy that's loading all the way down in the distance because you've triggered something. Maybe as you look to that area, the camera visibility and whatnot, those things are not yet ready to start even dealing with the GPU by the time the CPU catches it. So these open world games will require a lot of this computation, and that really rests on the heart of the CPU. So when Digital Foundry was doing a little bit of that, analysis for the Elden Ring and, looking at its frame rate and talking about it, what they saw to me was not, something that I was shocked or surprised about. In fact, my, console killer build, the one that I made to defeat the PlayStation 5 for $650, behaves almost the same way. If anything, I think the way the PC version actually does, I also drop some frames. I can drop frames all the way from from 60 it will go all the way. I think I saw 54 FPS, but that was the lowest it would go, around 54 FPS. But the PS5 Pro dropped in some cases, as low as, about 54. They're behaving almost the same way, because the CPU that I'm using in there is just slightly, in my opinion anyways, better than the PlayStation 5's CPU. So that overclock that you're getting, you're going to see the difference. I was trying to capture the footage last night, but I had my baby girl sleeping on my arm. She wanted to just kind of stay on dad's shoulders. So all I did was just walk around the open world, and I just kind of observed it. Now, it's crazy that I would say you have to take my word for it, but I can say just type in those specs and watch Elden Ring gameplay with 6750 XT. And I think a lot of the reviews are using the 5600 as well, which is also a really solid GPU. The 6800 and, its rendering capabilities require, for a GPU to unlock its capabilities to be much more than that of the PS5 Pro. So already what you're seeing in this discrepancy is not really anything that should surprise you. That extra boost that you're going to get from the PlayStation 5 Pro in its boost mode is an extra 10% in terms of CPU. You will see it, but there will be a limit to it. That's all it is. And that's what you call, your CPU bottleneck. It's that limit that it pretty much hits to be able to push out frames in that neck area of, say, let's say the bottle. I think Daniel Owen explained it the best way. Let's just say the bottle is pumping out frames, and the GPU is doing its thing, but the CPU pretty much reaches the point where it's max and it can't point out anymore, which is the neck. And so this is why we're here. Now, again, some people would also argue and say that the game has not been a PS enhanced game in that regard. But again, I think this is PlayStation fans learning the hard way. And I want to call this point out because most PlayStation fans have said some really interesting things. They've talked about the Series S in a very interesting light. And so now I want to actually ask and say, well, so you mean the game has not been, taking time to be looked at to be optimized for this new hardware? Well, good. I'm glad you're actually pointing that out, because what this means now is developers are going to have to move, into the tweaking process to allow to use the new features of the PlayStation 5 Pro, which is pretty much what, they do on the PC platform for the most part. So it's crazy. Console SKUs are broadening every year. Now on the new generation, we have 4 SKUs by themselves. Xbox launched with 2 and PlayStation launched with 1 in terms of its, similarities, but now you have a second one there in this particular regard. I also wanted to take the time to say something in this entire conversation. I've seen some comments And some people have said, that I guess maybe they've approached the videos that I'm making on the PS5 Pro from the perspective that I may be, attacking them or, talking about the PlayStation 5 Pro in an unfair manner. I want to go ahead and say, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro, it is your right to spend your money as you please. That's the very first thing you hear about me. My stance on the PlayStation 5 Pro is the value proposition. It doesn't affect how you still go spend your money. I'm just here to point out the value proposition from a price to performance ratio. Like this audience member of mine said, shout out to you, bro. You have a continental name. Your name tells me who you are. And, I love that because, we're basically, how do we call it? The same compatriots or something, compatriots in the sense. It says, it's funny to me how people have made up an argument for the PS5 Pro that Sony never said. This is true because we saw these PlayStation fans, the hyper fans, actually go ahead and do that. They said 4070, all of that stuff, but many of them never even said anything about or considered that the CPUs that you have on PC, would pretty much come in and obliterate a lot because the games, and this is where you look at an SoC, APU socket type, device, which is a console compared to a dedicated, PC. The dedicated PC has just an unfair edge over you because it's splitting its processes in a way that really gives it the best advantage. They didn't hype it up. They just did side-by-side show to show the improvements. Sony did that. The hyper fanboys did hype it up, though. I bought a PS5 Pro for two reasons. First, my TV is too good, LG OLED, to not have the best console graphics possible. I don't have a gaming PC, don't want one, and I'm not forcing nor recommending it to anyone. All I'm saying is, when you think about it, you realize that the talk that this particular console was going to step near PCs within its price category is basically nonsense, right? And I'm glad that everybody's actually sitting on the table and laying out their cards exactly where it needs to be. I don't have a game. And they said, so I want my console to be the best console, and the Pro is the best console. Digital Foundry says that explicitly now. Digital Foundry didn't have to say that. What was already provided had already said that. I think a lot of people put too much stock in what Digital Foundry says. And I'm of the mind that, no. For our console brethren, we need to get to the point where you're comfortable understanding hardware. And I think it really will inform everything that you are doing. Like, you're not going to go in there. And I'm glad you actually, you see, this is a unique, level-headed PlayStation user that has taken the time to understand exactly what the console is going to offer. But you remember that people actually let out from their mouth 4090 in the conversation of PS5. Now, they were laughed at. But the 4070, there were people who took that. I think they looked at a chart. That's what they did. When Cerny said 45%, up to 45%, they looked at a chart with, GPU capabilities. They went to, I think there's a GPU website that shows like these little charts, and it shows you the percentage increases of different GPUs over others. And they ran with that. They somehow thought that they had that data set locked down. If you notice, the best looking game is not even using PSSR. It's Horizon running on the Decima engine. That is to the credit of the developers because they optimize as like heck. This is Guerrilla. Guerrilla knows how to make pretty looking games. Even Killzone from back in on the PS4, when I first played that Killzone, I can't remember which one it was. I remember playing like the first 30 minutes or an hour. I was blown away how good that game looked. So I'm not shocked that Guerrilla is making a beautiful game that is not even touching the new upscaling technology. That's kind of a benchmark for them. What that says to me is that the games coming in the future that are optimized specifically for the Pro, especially first-party games, are going to be the best graphics on console ever. It all depends on the artistic direction of the developers, and I think this is something that we need to point out. Graphics are very relative. If a game looks good and a game, can actually make sacrifices in areas that don't necessarily, overpower, or I guess I would say overwhelm their hardware, they can really bring out some artistically pleasing aspects to their game. And it also depends on the art direction and the game as well. And I got, to have that as a console gamer. I sold my PS5 with some accessories for $500. Doesn't bother me to spend the extra $200 for the best. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. In my video, I said, I don't see where $200 actually correlates with that, because again, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, if we have to spend $200 extra on PC, there's an expectation that we have. And if I put that same expectation on the PlayStation 5 Pro, it fails, which is not an unreasonable expectation for the performance that I'm looking for. But again, I'm using a PC lens to be able to look at the console. I myself have a PS5, right? If I wanted to go for the Pro, I like graphics too. I like improvement. I also own a 4090 at this point too. I mean, I'm just saying, but if I look and say, maybe I want to get the best console, I look and say, what is my, improvement based on this extra it's actually $280, because you got to buy that disk drive if you have discs. I have to ask myself and say, is it worth doing or is it not worth doing? But I got that to spend, and that's great. Not everyone does. It's cool. I don't have a luxury car. Me neither. That's why I said we're kin. Choices. I want the best console gaming experience, so I got a Pro, and that's perfectly fine. Does that make sense? You're not making up stuff to justify your purchase. You're making your purchase based on the information that you've had, based on the decision that you've made, and not necessarily sitting there and eating some kind of, delusion that a lot of these people have pretty much put out there. I mean, like I told you though, right? This was literally one of the, one of the craziest things that I got to see. And I showed, I told y'all, I said this was based on, we had this particular conversation months ago where there was this one person who was just an example, but there were many conversations like that. Look at it right here, where this person was insulting, throwing everything at, everybody, when we were telling them and say, hey, the expectation that you are setting is way too high. Don't do that. And they would not listen. And there were many like this. There were YouTubers like that got into it. The Turks is one of the YouTubers who did a very detailed analysis and compared, and he landed on the 6800. He was very accurate. The guy's a freaking FPS accountant. The way he did that video, and he told all these YouTubers, I will throw y'all in this video and slap y'all with the data and the evidence based on what we've seen and Digital Foundry has seen. And he set the expectations as close to the mark as possible. Like, I haven't seen his, victory lap video yet, but he was dead on, especially with the 6800. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen anything so accurate. However, because video game, analysis in terms of performance is scientific, it's very easy to draw hypotheses or theories that will almost line up, because this is what these guys sit there and do. Even I don't sit there and do that. I say even I don't. I shouldn't even throw myself in there. I'm not worthy. I don't go ahead doing that, right? Because that's very complicated. That's very complex. And at the end of the day, it all depends on what the individual wants in terms of their gaming. So again, we are looking for level-headed PlayStation 5 Pro, users. That's what we're doing. And we're educating those who have pretty much, I don't know what it is that they decided that they were going to do, that they were going to go ahead and somewhat make some kind of a claim or whatever it may be, as to how the console works when the console doesn't even work like that. Setting an expectation that's wrong. They basically set themselves up for success. I said for success, for failure. All right. I'll get out of y'all's hair. Thank you so much for watching the video. Appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.